Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Sorry, I was up a bit late last night, partying away with with the people from SteamPaper and all of you lot virtually. So yes, a bit tired this morning, really a bit tired. But it's yes, lovely to welcome you all back to SteamPunk over Ether this morning. Oh, blimey, I appear to be in the bathysphere. How do I get in there? I'm in the middle of the ocean. Oh, well, I'll have to travel back. I'll have to travel back to the SteamPaper mansion to sort things out for later on. But we have a fantastic, great lineup for you today. Lineup of things today. I've just realised I need to display any comments and questions. Good morning, Malika. Hello. And yes, so once again we're launching this virtual SteamPunk festival. We've got lots of things lined up. I can see your comments over there, which is weird because I'm looking in that direction. Too much, but yes, Andrea, yes, it was too much beer last night. Definitely too much beer. And so let me run through what we've got for you coming up for you today. So in just a minute we'll be hearing a story from George the Bear. Read by Kerry Lee Harper, and that's rather wonderful. And then about sort of 12:15, 12, about 12:25, something like that. We're going to have another Meet the Makers session, and we've got some fantastic videos of all the gadgets and so on. I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but we've got some more wonderful gadgets today, some fantastic gadgets. And can I just say, Raphaelis Grasser, I can't pronounce it, I'm terrible with names, from Switzerland has sent us in just this morning another video in English this time, telling us all about how to fire up his steam carriage. It's a brilliant video. I guarantee you should watch that. We'll be showing that after the all the other wonderful things you're going to see, so don't miss that. It's great fun, and it's an amazing machine. So if you want to build, get some tips about building your own, then you can certainly do so. So he's my new hero, I think. And then at 1 o'clock, you need to dress up in your smart duds because we're off to the opera. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, a bit of culture. I do like a bit of culture. We have a SteamPunk Opera 8 in concert. So it's a video of a performance, and it's rather wonderful. It's very opera-like. If you like opera, you're going to love it. And then at 3 o'clock, in a complete change of pace, we're going to go right to the other end of the theatrical spectrum because we're hitting the musical. And we're hitting the musical with some good friends of mine, Green Matthews, and with some other good friends of mine, the Cognies. And another good friend of mine, Scarlet Butterfly, who's recorded a special fire performance just for you people out there. So it's rather wonderful. And then later on this afternoon, we'll be taking a trip to Hopeless Maine and learning all about the rather dark, mysterious, and funny island of Hopeless Maine. Then we've got what else we've got coming up today? Oh yes, we've got the fabulous shopping channel that we're running, so that should be a laugh. Really good. So watch for that. That's at 5 o'clock. Bit of retail therapy, always good. And then we've got ukulele tea time with those wonderful people at Ukulele, or is that Ukulele? Imagine War of the Worlds. You'll get it. And Keith Dawson. And then this evening we've got an eclectic mix of different songs, including a special track from The Major. He was recorded for us, aka Mr. B. And then I'm doing a kind of chat show. So we're doing a chat show. We've got a couple of guests lined up for that. And then we're doing a story at bedtime. So that's what we've got lined up today. I'm doing my news thing here. This is what news people do. And a cup of coffee. So, hello, Raffers. Brilliant. Lovely that you could join us this morning. And who else have we got joining us? All sorts of people up there. Hello, Kat Scott. Hello, Shakila. Oh, hello, Helen. How are you? Hello, Ian. Wonderful. Yes, so I'm going to launch off. As I say, we've got this lovely story from George the Bear, and then we'll be following that up after about about 15 minutes with Meet the Makers. So we are going to have all sorts of wonderful videos from people. So let's have a story from the bear.
I was saying to him that I don't think it's very funny either. Oh, hello there. Hello. Good afternoon. I'm the Admiral. How are you? I'd like to sit down and read you a little story called George Shorttail and the Time Machine by C. Harper Lee. Where do I get to now? The prologue. Chapter 1-ish. We're all going on a summer holiday. George was bored. He was lying in his bed reading his well-thumbed copy of H.G. Wells's The Time Machine, while Spot was curled up at his feet, fast asleep on the sunniest bit of the bed. It was the middle of the summer holidays, and so far he had been on literally no adventures. "Spot," he began, "I'm bored." Spot looked at him and meowed as the little brass bell on his collar tinkled. George had only recently purchased a new red leather ID for Spot, as the last one from when they first met had mysteriously vanished. "I need to go on a great adventure," he added. Harmony called up from the kitchen, "George, lunch is ready. Wash your paws and come down, please." He frolicked half-heartedly down the wooden stairs. "When you go and visit Posy this afternoon?" asked Harmony, placing his toasted cheese and marmalade sandwich in front of him. There was a postcard from his brother on the table. On the front was a picture of San Francisco Bay. "Greetings from Frisco," it said. Angelo had scribbled a few lines on the back. "Hello from the Castro. Having a fab time with Lompa. So many bears. See you soon. Love, Angelo. Kiss, kiss, kiss." He finished his sandwich, placed his plate in the sink and walked outside towards Posy House, followed by Spot. "That's odd," he thought as he knocked on the door of his friend's house. There was a large sign saying, "Inventing. Please call at rear of house." Turning the corner, George could hear Posy and her dad talking. "Okay, that bit goes there and this bit goes here," Mr. Shortpaw was saying. "Oh yes, I see now," Posy replied. "Oh, hello, Posy," said George. "Oh, hello," she replied, waving at him from behind what appeared to be an upside-down green leather sofa. "Hello, George," said Mr. Shortpaw. "Just in time too," he added. George looked quizzically at him, wondering what he meant. As they clambered over the sofa, George pointed out that she had an oil spot on her cheek and some on her t-shirt. "Doesn't it look spiffing?" she said, wiping her face on her t-shirt. George didn't know what to reply, as he wasn't very technically minded. Yes," he replied. Mr. Shortpaw passed him a magazine. George looked at the front cover. "Practical Engineering from Bears," it read. "Isn't it brilliant?" said Posy. "I've waited for absolute ages to build this." "Maybe I can explain, George," said Mr. Shortpaw. "We've managed to attach a sort of temporal displacement circuit onto this ordinary-looking sofa," he added. George nodded, not really understanding. Seeing that George was a bit lost with the technical jargon, Mr. Shortpaw continued. "Well, what that means in practical terms is you can travel to any point in time, or even space," he added with a chuckle. George thought for a moment. Wait a minute, Mr. Shortpaw. Are you telling me you built a time machine out of a Chesterfield?" Wiping his paws on an oily rag, Mr. Shortpaw replied, "The way I see it, if you're going to build a temporal conveyance, why not do it with some style?" "Double wow," said George. "Double wow indeed," answered Mr. Shortpaw. Posy interjected, "Yes, but there is a small proviso to all this. It warns in this magazine that one of the downsides is you mustn't interact with yourselves in the past or future, or it may rip a hole in the fabric of reality." "I think what we need now is a cup of tea," said Mr. Shortpaw. George nodded. "And a slice of cake," he added. Posy giggled, giving her friend a hug as she did. A large cake and several cups of tea later, they were all stood around the sofa admiring it. "I think we should give it a test run," said Mr. Shortpaw. "I shall set the time dilation circuits from 1 minute from now to see if it works before we give it a proper run," he added. He opened the panel that was concealed under the armrest and clicked the dials into place. "May I have your necklace key, please, Posy?" asked Mr. Shortpaw. Handing it to her father, he placed it into the slot and gave it a quarter turn. With a satisfying clunk, a humming noise came from the sofa as the time circuits engaged. "Stand back, everyone," he said as the machinery worked. 5, 4, 3, counted Posy excitedly. Before anyone could stop him, Spot jumped out of George's arms and onto the sofa as it vanished. "Oh, lummy!" exclaimed George. Posy reassured him that it was all right, as Spot would only be away for a minute. They suddenly reappeared with a poof! Minus Spot. "Ooh!" exclaimed Mr. Shortpaw. "I wasn't expecting that." George was a little concerned for his cat, hoping that he'd be all right. Behind him came a familiar meowing. There was Spot, no worse for wear for his time hop. "See," said Posy. "I knew it'd be okay." George picked up his cat and noticed that the collar was missing. No doubt Spot had managed to wiggle this one off too. "Well," said Posy, "that seems to work perfectly then." Mr. Shortpaw agreed. "Yes, I think you and George should try it now. Now remember what I said about only taking small jumps and no interacting." Posy nodded. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll be careful," she said. "Where would you like to go?" she asked George as they fastened their seatbelts. George thought about it for a few minutes. He said. "I never got to meet Commode the Wise before they left Canada." "That sounds like it could be fun," said Posy as she dialed the coordinates. Travelling along the time stream, George could see swirling patterns of light. He knew he was perfectly safe, as Mr. Shortpaw had explained to him earlier over tea, using the teapot and its cosy as an example, how the sofa was wrapped in its own kind of bubble that would keep them safe as they traversed time. George tentatively opened his eyes. "Have we arrived?" he asked. Posy glanced at the time circuits. "Yes, but I don't think this is Canada," she added. "I think we are where we started, and according to the time circuits, it's about 4 years ago." George looked at his surroundings as he undid his seatbelt. "Let's have a scout around," he suggested. Agreeing, Posy unbuckled herself, taking the key from its slot as she got off the sofa. The familiar smell of Honey Grove made George smile as he took a deep breath. "Come on, George," said Posy. "Let's go this way." Walking to the edge of the village by the false foliage wall, they could see Redtail and his gang camped on the opposite side. Dusk was falling as they approached the edge of the trees. Across from them they could see Redtail sitting on a 3-legged stool, having his tail brushed by spatula thread outside an ornate Arabian-style bell tent. "Shall we get a little closer?" suggested Posy with a wink. George nodded and concentrated very hard. Soon the two invisible bears could hear the squirrels plotting inside Redtail's tent. "Mumble, mumble, bears," came one voice. "Mutter, mutter, nit," came another. George and Posy both knew that they were plotting and thought it best not to interfere. Scouting round, they could hear up-tempo Latino music drifting into the star-filled night. Silhouetted against the side wall of one of the tents on the outskirts of the encampment, they could see a familiar-looking shadow lit by a solitary safety lantern. George and Posy both agreed that whoever was singing had a superbly mellifluous voice. As the two stealthily approached, they could see a brown bear sitting on a camping chair, accompanying himself on a small Spanish guitar, whilst a scratchy gramophone record played in the background. "¿Quién está ahí?" said the bear, putting down his guitar as they drew near. Posy reappeared suddenly in front of him. "Dios mío!" said the bear. "Está bien, somos amigos," said Posy. calmly. George stuck his paw out in greeting. "Hello," he began. "I'm George, and this is Posy. We're here to rescue you." The bear peered at the two chums, curious to know how they knew he would need rescuing. "How did you know I needed rescuing?" he asked. "We didn't," replied George. "I just like quoting that line from my favourite film," he said blushingly. The bear smiled and cleared his throat. "I am Don Juan de Luis Cervantes Delante, but you may call me Juan," he said. "What are two pequeño bears doing out this time of night?" Posy began to explain when one of the squirrel guards started to walk towards them. Quick as a flash, they both vanished. "What's going on here?" said Crow's Nest Pete. Juan stared at him for a moment. "Aquí no ha nadie más que gallines," he replied with a smile. Crow's Nest Pete glowered at him, not understanding. "Right, yes, don't let it happen again," he said pointedly as he walked away. Reappearing again, George and Posy wanted to know why Juan was working with the squirrels. "Well, my niños, I was captured by Redtail and his pirates and forced to work with him as a translator. I normally work at the University of San Marcos in Lima as a professor. That was until about, I think, a week ago when I was bear-napped." Posy gave Juan a hug and suggested a way for him to escape. Invisibly, she sneaked towards Redtail's ornate tent and started to unpeg the supports. Slowly the tent descended like a deflating pink blancmange on top of the unsuspecting squirrels. Redtail was indignantly huffing and puffing, inquiring who was responsible for this outrage, and not knowing it was Posy who was silently giggling to herself as she tiptoed away. Gathering his belongings, Juan stealthily crept away from the encampment with the chums towards where the time machine was hidden. "You came in that thing?" said Juan, pointing at the Chesterfield. "You're braver than I thought," he added. Posy and the others buckled themselves in as she unlocked the panel and set the coordinates. "Posy, I don't think this is Lima," said George as they arrived at their destination. Looking around, it seemed to be the hold of a large wooden sailing ship. "I think you may be right," she replied. Asking Juan to stay put, George and Posy walked towards a wooden door and tentatively pushed it open. A large crowd was gathered on the other side, all looking towards a raised platform at the other end of the deck. "I think I know where we are," said George. "I think this is the bit where we get our medals from the Queen," he added. Looking towards the far end, Posy could indeed see herself and George with the Queen. "I think we should go before we get spotted," said Posy. George agreed, but asked if they could wait a bit longer. Quietly they snuck back into the ship's hold, and Posy reset the dials. "Here we go again," she said as the sofa vanished.
So there we go. Lovely story about George the Bear and the time machine. And if you want to follow more of that story, then do go over to the George Shorttail Facebook page. Just check out, get that right. Small Grey Bear Adventures. There'll be links to more videos up there. I will put links on the page and on the description of this video at some point, probably tomorrow, I think. At this rate, I've got lots to do today. But yes, lovely story. Thank you very much, Kerry Lee Harper, the Admiral there. So next up, we've got some great videos from the makers, but I need to get out of this bathysphere and get myself back on my airship. Well, I suppose I can use my short distance transmitting device. Hang on a second, 1 second. There we go. I'm now on my airship, travelling back to the Steam Paper Mansion. Fantastic. I'm glad that worked. It doesn't always work, you know. And now we have some fantastic videos for some makers. So yesterday we had some great stuff, and we will see again. We've got We've got some inventions from John Child, who does the most amazing stuff. We've got some wonderful stuff from Raphaelis. And we've got Andy Arbon talking about a model he made and also his computer. His computer's quite amazing. So that's in this next section now. Let's meet some more makers.
Hi guys, now today I'd like to talk to you about a SteamPunk model. Now this is particularly a model that I entered in the Great Exhibition this year at Asylum, so Asylum 2019, Asylum 11. Now the model, anybody who's at Asylum may have seen this at the Great Exhibition, was this, which is Deep Sea Explorer 12. It's a model of a submarine on a nice wooden base, and today I'm going to talk to you a bit about how I made this, some of the techniques, some of the parts I used. So this is the model as it was featured in the Great Exhibition. So we have the main model of the submarine, we have the description card, and we also have a replica piece of Victorian newspaper article, which I will talk a little bit about in this video as well. But first we'll look at the, well in fact let me first read the description card. So the description of this model is that it is a model of Deep Sea Explorer 12 and newspaper article. And the Deep Sea Explorer 12 was a prototype submarine boat lost during sea trials in 1882. It was initially thought to have been crushed in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, but the vessel's loss ultimately led to the bankruptcy of the Deep Sea Exploration Company in December of that year. The vessel was discovered in 1883, intact but abandoned, beached on Clipperton Island. The two-man crew have never been found, and over subsequent years there have been many wild theories as to their fate, including them being captured by pirates or consumed by a kraken. Now that's the description that I came up with to support this model. Now the model itself is almost entirely plastic, painted plastic. The main body here, the sort of Nautilus shell-shaped part, is the casing for a centrifugal extractor fan, which it was absolutely free to me. I found it in a bin because my landlord at my last flat had the unfortunate habit of putting anything he ripped out of other flats into my bin. Every so often it led to a gem like this. Most of the time it was just rubbish. And yeah, most of what's on here is salvaged, all just stuck together with either something called plastic weld, which is the trade name for a substance, a dichloromethane based plastic glue, which is like a solvent plastic glue, or for some of the things that couldn't be stuck with that are just stuck with super glue. I think there's possibly a few bits stuck with araldite on this as well. So the paint finish on this, as I may have said previously, I don't have an airbrush. I generally use spray paint. So it was an undercoat of this, which is just a Halford's red oxide car primer, and then a top coat of this, which is again just a Halford's car paint. Then I did a black wash, what I believe some modelers call an oil wash. It's just very watered down acrylic paint, just to run into all the detail and pick out all of these sort of black lines throughout. Just ages it down, makes it look dirty. The decals on this, the number 12s, the little stars, little info panels down here, are just a mixture of things that I had left over. So they are, I think the number 12s are from a Revel 1/72 scale helicopter kit. Some of the others are Warhammer 40k. Some of them are for an American military truck. And they are basically just what I happen to have left over that I put together to give it a few little details. The lighting on this is yellow flicker flame LEDs. Now, interesting thing about those is it's actually, due to the bizarre way that the world works, it is actually cheaper to buy Poundland packs of 4 flicker flame tea lights and dismantle them than it is to buy flicker flame LEDs off the internet. So these are LEDs from tea lights, and they are wired with a resistor to allow them all to run on 5 volts, so this just runs off a phone charger. Now, also, it does allow it to be run off power banks if there's no power supply available, which is useful because for Great Exhibition entries for the Asylum, you're not supposed to run them off mains power. Now, as it happened, I could run this off mains power, but I had the provision there to enable it to run off power banks. Another thing to note, if something like this is transportation, if you're taking it to an event like the Asylum, something like this is quite delicate. So certain elements like this periscope actually just unscrews. It's just fitted on a piece of screw thread. This little hatch here just pops off. The rudder here folds. The glass domes just pop out, and then it makes it a lot easier to transport. So if we look around here, we've got a combination of rubbish and various bits of plastic strip. So if I just take you through briefly what's on this side of it, we have down here, these little tanks down here are bits of pen casing and pearlescent embellishments from the works. That's a piece of Slater's Plastistruct girder section. The little square there is a hanger tag, so a size tag from a clothing hanger. You've got most of the pipe work on here is copper electrical wire, just overpainted, and in some cases not overpainted. These sort of interesting shapes down here, these feet, if you look just down here, the feet are like pocket clips from pens, and then underneath those 2 tanks are a couple of nitrous canisters that you just find in the street every so often. Around the back here we have this tank made up of 15mm plumbing fittings. The propeller is a computer fan, a graphics card cooler, I believe it is. We've got a Warhammer 40k missile launcher. We've got, again, bits of electrical wire, bits of pen casing, bits of plastic tube. These sort of part curved and part square elements, the same that have been used down here, are holders for pencil lead. So the lead that you put in a propelling pencil, they're little containers it comes in. The winch around here is wound onto a sewing machine bottom spool. I think there is a technical name for it, I'm not quite sure. Down here again we have pen barrels, we have part of a soap dispenser, we have just a bit of netting, bit of sewing thread, again sewing thread, more plastistrut girder, a lantern from a set of Christmas tree lights, 15mm plumbing stop end, little bits of 1mm thick plastic card punched out with a leather punch. All of this sort of detailing on here is this stuff, which is evergreen plastic strip. You can buy it from model shops, you can buy it off the internet. It's a very good product for doing this kind of thing. And then, as I say again on the top, if we just go up here, the hatch here is a cut in half sellotape spool and a thimble case. And the wheel on here is the only part on this that's actually 3D printed. I have a friend who has a 3D printer who occasionally prints me things, so that was something I asked them to print because it would have been a nightmare to fabricate. The little step irons here are just staples, just standard staples out of a stapler. That's a piece of thimble case. That's the clear part of the same thimble case. And then on the side here we have these large hemispheres, which are of course Christmas baubles. I think these were from Pound World, now defunct Pound World. If I just pop one of these out, it will allow you to see a little bit better inside. So inside we have quite a few bits in here, a few details. So we have this desk here, which is made out of a piece of plywood out the back of a photo frame. Teacup is it's a charm bracelet type charm. Maps are just printed off on a standard printer and then folded and unfolded to give them that realistic crease. The ship's telegraph here is just like a little novelty miniature thing that was from a gift shop. Then in the back here we have the seats are from a 1/18th scale model car. I believe it was James Bond's Aston Martin that was very badly damaged. Wallpaper is Doll's House wallpaper, William Morris wallpaper, because of course you'd have a wallpapered submarine. You may guess some of the influence for this was a little bit Wallace and Gromit, especially Grand Day Out, the rocket ship in Grand Day Out. The nice little frosted shade up here on the light is it's a anti-vibration bearing out of a DVD burner. And I'll just spin this all the way around actually and pop the other hemisphere out to allow you to see in from the other side to see the nice little bookshelves here. Now on the bookshelves we have a set of binoculars, again just a charm bracelet charm, and the books on there are checkbook stubs, just cut down to give the little pages. And then we have the floor here, tread plate is out of a 1/32nd scale armoured personnel carrier. We have these little wheels are just more little charm bracelet charms painted up. The steering wheel is I say a tiller bar there is part of it's two Christmas cracker little miniature bowling pins chopped in half and then glued back together and then painted with a wood effect. And then just again on this side, again mainly just pen casings and things like that to build up on the outside, and just bits of wire. And yeah, so that's pretty much the submarine itself covered. So we'll just move on to this little newspaper article that I produced to go with it. So this is in a genuine, I think it's 1920s photo frame that I picked up from a charity shop. The newspaper article itself is it's printed onto actual newspaper. I managed to buy. You can buy blank newspaper off eBay. I tea stained it, I say tea stained, more coffee stained actually to make it old. And then I just found I got some newspaper fonts. Now these are from the HP Lovecraft Society. They I don't think they're available anymore. They did have a free download of fonts, free for non-commercial use. So this is fonts from the HP Lovecraft Society, which are based on actual 1920s newspaper articles. Now there is also around here, look, you can see just the tips of other articles which are genuine Victorian articles that I just pulled off the internet. And then of course on the back we have a load of adverts, again just pulled off the internet to make it look more like it is actually a piece of newspaper. Yeah, so that's that. And then this again, the description card, this is just some parchment type paper and a piece of black card and photo corners just to give it that sort of nice weighty old effect. The submarine itself is based onto a piece of I think it's oak, which I've just stained to match the picture frame because the picture frame was already stained. And yeah, so that's pretty much the submarine, the model that I entered in the Great Exhibition last year.
Hello, and it's lovely to be back here at the SteamPunk Over Ether event with another pointless creation. I'm Dr. Arthur Chillo, and here is the small but perfectly formed deluxe gravity mug set with the elegant drinking vessel inside, which I'll remove now for you. It is possible to readily determine the specific gravity of the beverage it contains. I'm holding it the wrong way around. The discrete hydrometer can be adjusted using the set of weights provided according to the liquid contained, and the convenient built-in thermometer enables the user to easily make the correct compensation when undertaking the gravity calculations. It also has the added benefit of preventing scalds when imbibing hot drinks. One can accurately ascertain the sugar content of one's tea, detect the presence of poison in one's licorice water, or if the original gravity is known, the true alcohol content of one's beer. All is possible using the simple to use tables included. The tables are compact and small, but the kit comes with a convenient spyglass to ensure that you can read them clearly and easily. The whole set comes in a complete travel case, very robust, and the deluxe gravity mug set ensures the discerning drinker need never be unspecific about the specific gravity of their beverage. So I'm going to make myself a pot of tea and I'll show you how it works. Thank you. For me, the precise sugar content of my tea is of great interest, so I've calibrated the hydrometer accordingly. So I'm going to put my milk in first. I'm going to add rather too much sugar because I have a fondness of sugar. So I normally have about 4 sugars in this big mug of tea. And then I'm going to pour the tea. Just going to stir it. There we are. One mug of tea, very stylish, very nice cup of tea. and we can see that the temperature gauge has shot up there, so that's at 70 degrees, so that's fine, that's just where I need it to be. The hydrometer's floated up and I can look through there and read off the specific gravity. Yeah, so that's it, that's the gravity mug. What an amazing thing that you could rarely do without, and if you're in danger of being poisoned on a regular basis, this is the way to check whether you've got poison in your tea. So we've made the tea, it's now cooled down enough to a point where I can drink it because it was way too hot when it came straight out of the pot. And now all that remains is for me to say to you all, very good health, and we will be back with our final pointless creation shortly. So until then, I wish you a fond goodbye. Cheers. Oh, lovely that is. Bang on. Hello again all you splendid steampunk over ether people. It's Dr. Arthur Chillo here, and I'm back with the last of the pointless creations that I'll be demonstrating for you. So here we have Tentaculus, which is an ingenious game of quick-wittedness and dexterity. The object is to navigate the lighter-than-air vessel HMAS Copernicus through the lethal tentacles of the mighty Cracanius Giganticus and save your passengers, your crew, and the cargo of particularly good Darjeeling. The fatal tentacles are animated by a clockwork mechanism, and a sense of drama is also created by the integral musical box playing none other than The Ride of Valkyries by Mr. Wagner. Should you fail in your mission to steer past the beast and awaken his fury, you will be notified by the sounding of a splendid electric bell. I will now wind the clockwork and demonstrate the game in action. So I'm going to come round here. So, as I said, we can. The aim is to try and get past the the Sky Monster with the airship. But to give you an idea of scale, first of all, the airship here has a crew of 13 people, 200 passengers on board, and 4 tons of Darjeeling tea in the cargo hold. Now we can manoeuvre the airship from side to side, backwards and forwards backwards and sideways and all ways, apart from upways and downways. And the reason for that is that to climb rapidly and escape the tentacles of a flying kraken, you'd have to lose some weight pretty quickly, and you're not going to throw the Darjeeling out of the back, so that's never going to happen. You could perhaps toss a few passengers overboard, but that's not very good PR to do that for the airship company. And the other thing you could do is descend rapidly by venting gas, but then there's a risk you might crash into the ground, and it's very expensive to replace the gas and time consuming too. So the best option is to stay horizontal and find your way through, find a path past the tentacles of the Kraken. Now the Kraken himself, they've not got very good eyesight, your Sky Kraken, so you can see when you see his face, he's got kind of quite cloudy eyes, but they've got very sensitive nerve endings in the tentacles, so if you brush up against one, he's going to know you're there and drag you down towards his vicious beak and tear you to shreds, which we don't want. So the skill is finding a route through the waggling tentacles without brushing against him and waking him up. Now, as I said in my introduction, I'm going to come back this way now. If we do have an incursion with a tentacle, we know all about it. We know we've lost the game because it rings the bell. So it's simple as that. It's a very straightforward little game. There's a number of routes that you can get past if you're very careful, between all this knots of tentacles like Medusa's hair. But there are a number of ways through, so there we are, we're flying our airship very safely under the hands of a very skilled pilot backwards and forwards. So that's the Tentaculous game. As I said, get it wrong, you get an alarm call. So we've been flying past without waking this fella up quite successfully, mainly because I've had quite a lot of practice with it. But the old Cracanius giganticus, fearsome beasts. However, the Kraken in the game has been described by some people who've seen it at exhibitions and shows as cute. I can't see it personally. I mean, he's quite a nasty thing really when you look at him. But yeah, some people have said he's cute, and I do have to say though that our pet name for him at home is Old Squiddy. So there we are, that's he's not perhaps as fearsome as he looks in this scale, but you imagine if he was full-sized, real beast in the sky, you wouldn't want to be having to navigate your airship past him. Okay.
Right, thank you very much. So before I bid you all farewell, I'd like to explain a little bit about how Tentaculous came to be. Well, it started when I found the bell here in an antique centre, and I liked it, thought it had a good look to it, and decided that if it worked I had to make it into something. The first thing that occurred to me was that old favourite school fake game, the hoop and a bent wire, which I thought was not very steampunk, and then I thought, well, maybe I can make it into the shape of an octopus or a kraken, and then eventually Tentaculous was the evolution of that exponential expansion of thought. So just the way of making something working from an simple object sort of was a thought process, and it's very much a steampunk kind of process, I think. So some of you makers out there probably understand that when you get an object and you see an object, then eventually that object tells you what it wants to be. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed my demonstrations of the pointless creations of Dr. Chillo and Professor Baz. And I do also have to say that this is the first steampunk show I've ever done wearing carpet slippers. So you'll have to forgive me for that one. I didn't put my nice shoes on. And then, so it just remains for me to say, enjoy the rest of Steampunk over Ether, and I hope to see you in person at a physical steampunk show in the future when I won't be wearing my carpet slippers. Thank you very much. Good day to you all.
Hello guys, I thought I'd give you a quick tour of my SteamPunk PC, reveal a few of the bits that you probably won't see during the talk. So yeah, let's get started. We'll start with the main tower down here. Now this is standard PC tower, unmodified internally. It's got a sort of standard motherboard, processor, RAM, running Windows 10. I can give you a few more details on that if anybody's actually interested, but I don't really think anybody is. Moving around the side here, we've got this cabinet with a lot of detailing in it, mainly clock parts, but there are a few other bits. I can just pop that open on that little catch, and you can see it's a lot of cogs, a lot of gearing. Got some LED tape up there giving the orange glow, which you can't actually see when the door's shut. We've got a couple of meters here adapted with brass protractors to give quite an interesting effect. Again, none of these are actually powered or anything, it's just the LEDs powered inside here. Pop that shut. Moving around the front, these two gauges at the top are the only bits with genuine incandescent bulbs, and that's purely because you can see the bulbs. These are actually doll's house lighting bulbs, but they're run under voltage on 9 volts to prolong the life of the bulbs and to give a nicer sort of warmer glow. LED warm white strip in here, that's running on full 12 volts. To get the 9 for here, got this little package on the side which actually contains a 12 to 9 buck converter, so the wiring going into that is live. We've got that's just a handle off a mini fridge. That's a genuine antique part that I picked up from a junk shop. Moving down, that's a drawer front from a kitchen that I found in a skip, solid oak. Fuse, miniature knife switch, no idea what that's off of, but it just looks the part. Standard plumbing parts either side. Moving further down, we've got the pilot light assembly. Now that is a genuine gas boiler pilot light, and if I just move that out of the way, you can just see the flickering there. That's purely just the disk activity light and in orange and the power light in blue to give that nice little gas flame effect. Start button, that's just a piece of brass plate and a doorbell push. Moving back up, this actually drops down, it's just held in place by a magnet just there and there. Standard optical drive, card reader, that just shuts up, hides all that away. Coming over the top, that's genuinely old. I think it's actually French if you look at the spelling on it. Moving over the back, we've got this little AC motor kind of rigged as a bit of a generator with a pulley, aluminium pulleys, not entirely sure what they would have been off. Coming around this side, we've got some more detail down here, little plates coming from traction engine rallies and things. We've got a little wiring diagram up here that came off something. Underneath the desk, we're actually hiding an awful lot of cabling. So we've got two multi-way sockets, one to house upside down type plugs, one for standard plugs, surge protected, all the wiring concealed under here. We've got big power adapters on a shelf over that side. Let's push these drawers shut again. Moving up the top, we've got keyboard. This is an old IBM keyboard, not a Model M. It isn't mechanical, unfortunately. It is just a rubber mat type keyboard. Keys are a laser cut off Etsy. Teak veneer, I think, stained dark oak. All the keys have had about 15 coats of polyurethane varnish to make them very hard wearing. Then we've got genuinely old amp meter, fake knife switches, which are actually brass fondue forks, and the bus bar from an old sort of Wilex fuse box. We've got, that's just a slab of pine. That isn't metal, it's MDF, painted to look like metal. Rivets done with those embellishments from the works, pearlescent embellishments. Morse key, genuine, old. That is genuinely old. That's some piece of lab equipment. It's a resistance box. It's not a decade resistance box. I can't remember what you call them. That's just a standard speaker from pawnbrokers, I think. Brass vase cut in half with a 15mm pipe elbow to give a little horn on the top. In there, that's a little actual model steam engine. Now, the clever part here is if you turn this gate valve, if I turn it in the right direction, it would help. That pushes on a little push to make switch, which then turns on the power, sets that going. Now that's driven off a worm drive on nylon gearing. I believe the gearing came and the motors for that came from a VCR, possibly an eject mechanism, but I'm not entirely sure because I've had it for ages. Headphone jack behind this little military bulging connector. Isn't a mains plug as it would be for military use, it's actually a USB 3 port. Screen, standard 28-inch I think screen. UPVC cladding edging strip painted green. Clock finials either side. Brass blowtorch with just 15mm standard copper piping. Thermometer holder. Novelty Jägermeister test tube with a glue gun stick in it with just a couple of green LEDs in the bottom. Looking over the top, that monitor is actually on just a standard VESA monitor mount, which is bolted into that big box down the bottom here. The big box here houses the distribution for the lighting and also the external hard disk. Moving over, we've got more sounder. This does work. I've not got it wired up at the moment. Amplifier isn't a valve amplifier. That is just sat on top of a little cheapy eBay Class T amp. Speaker, same as the other side. Mouse is a Pyrex, I think it is, gaming mouse. I think about 15 quid off Amazon. Only modification on that is I put a bit of Sharpie over the logo. Finally, just moving around the corner, we have the printer. Unmodified underneath, this is just a case that sits over it. Yeah, 1/24 scale, doll's house room box. All this is built in foam board, no metal in this at all. And again, the rivets with the pearlescent embellishments. You can just see on the front here, we've got a bit of a car badge going on just to give that old typewriter imperial look. And yeah, in the top here we've got ink tubes and various bits of old typewriter parts and drawer unit parts and all sorts of things. Big drum feed paper over the back that isn't actually feeding anything. And yeah, well, that's the SteamPunk PC. Thank you very much.
So there we go. We finished that with Andy Arbon's amazing computer that he built, and we had some other wonderful things in there, including John Child's wonderful creations. And of course some videos from Rafaelius, and I apologise if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Like most Brits, I can't do foreign languages. I'm dreadful. But I blame my Australian French teacher for that, can I just say. I had an Australian French teacher and I had no chance. No chance. Now, speaking of Rafaelius, he very kindly sent in a video this morning, which is brilliant, and it's in English. So now, you know, as steampunks, we all have steam carriages. You know, we all drive around in steam carriages, obviously. But do we know how to start them up properly? That's the thing. So this is an instructional video from Rafaelius, how to start up your steam carriage and make a rapid exit. So here we go.
Hey Internet, my name is Rafaelius, I live in Switzerland, and in this video I will show you how to fire up and driving down the road with my self-made steam carriage smoking Lila. Lila comes not with the regular combustion engine. Here we have an engine that works with the pressure of heated water called steam. So let's now light up the fire. Before we can use some charcoal, we need a lot of wood. To set the wood on fire, we need some barbecue lighters. Throw it in the firebox, and after waiting a few seconds, we fill up with little pieces of wood. What I'm doing now is mounting an electric air blower on the top of the chimney. This gives the fire enough oxygen. Later we will remove this fan and use steam to build a powerful air suction through the charcoal fire. At this moment we have to check if the water is in the right level and maybe fill it up with fresh water. I prefer to use osmotic water, which is even better than distilled water. This is the best way to never get some scale into the boiler, the pipes and the engine. Further, let's check if all valves are closed. We have to fire with wood until we have reached a boiler pressure of approximately 60 psi. This will take about 30 minutes. In the meantime, we can mount some missing parts of the carriage. The parts are missing because of the large size of Smoking Lila. My workshop door is only 80 centimeters in width, so I made the seat bench removable. Also an exhaust pipe extension and the rear view mirror has to be mounted. Now it's also time to pump up the tires and fill up the head and rear lamps with lamp oil. What I'm doing now is letting out some condensed water to fill it later up with oil. Now here comes the water, and water is out. Put the screw back in. The most important thing is lubricating that engine. Because if you may know, water is not a lubricant. I use the honey-like steam oil and fill it with the pump in this little container. Later, the steam will circulate in between this little oiler and take some small drops of oil to the pistons. Here we have two oscillating cylinders. The piston is getting steam from the boiler when moving forward and backward. So we reached about 4 bars, which is approximately 60 psi, and now I begin to throw some charcoals into the fire to get a much hotter flame. After this, let's remove the electric blower and open the steam blower valve to suck a huge amount of oxygen through a fire, which makes the coal fire burning really hot. Here you can see our two safety valves, which both will blow up at 87 psi. This is your best life insurance and will prevent you from very bad injuries by a horrible explosion in the boiler. To get sure that the valves are correctly working, I take a screwdriver, beating gently against the valves. If a little amount of steam blows out, everything could be okay. Now we reach the red area of the manometer and the safety valves should blow off a lot of steam. Meanwhile, about an hour is gone, the boiler temperature is about 120 degrees Celsius and we are ready to start the engine. But there's one thing you should know. The last time the engine cooled down, a small amount of steam was condensed into the cylinders and some pipes. As you may know, water is, instead of steam, not able to compress. So, if we would now just move the pistons, maybe the cold water would cause huge damage to the cylinders. For this case, we have some valves on the cylinder, which we can open up to blow off the water. Therefore, we further open the main steam valve gently until we can watch the old water blowing off. These wheels came from an old moped, and the best thing is that you can ungear the engine from the wheels. This is very useful for moving and ranking the carriage. But now we must release the nipple to clutch in the gear. So let's take a seat. By the way, you could be the passenger, because it's a double-seater. Before riding down the road, we can tell everybody around that we will start right now. So let's push on this arm to blow the old church organ whistles. The tiny lever is for the very loud and high-pitched whistle. Oh, and don't forget to hit the bell. Now finally, open the main steam valve and go for a ride. Ladies and gentlemen, full steam ahead! To not crash against a tree, you can use this little crank to steer the front wheel. Steam locomotives are directly driven, but what we have here is a very modern continuous variable gear called New Vinci. Originally it's made for bicycles, but it's the best thing I mounted on the smoking Lila. With this lever in down position, you have very high torque to climb some hills. You know, I'm in Switzerland. Otherwise, you can speed up to 10 miles per hour and be careful not to lose your head. To stop the carriage, we have 2 brakes on the rear wheels. The left one is handled by this lever. The other one comes as a foot pedal with a cable. From time to time we have to check if the fire is burning very well and feed a few pieces of coal into the firebox. Using steam is using water, which we must fill up from time to time. Lila is equipped with a so-called injector, which uses very special nozzles and condensing steam to push cold water against the boiler pressure and feed it up without using some moving parts in itself. Just open the steam injector valve and it should do the job very well. Here you can see the tank containing about 5 liters of cold water. The level gauge I've made of a floater and a brass rod. But if you pump cold water into a hot boiler, it will cool down and reduce pressure until you heat up the new water again. So be careful not to feed too much water at one time and always keep the fire burning as hot as you can. But first priority is to take care that the water level never falls below the lower margin. Otherwise, in the worst case, the boiler could overheat, metal will begin to glow and explode under the steam pressure. Not sure if you can survive such an explosion. After the last ride for today, we have to clean up the firebox from cinder and ash. By the way, I really hate this to do. I hope you enjoyed this little journey of firing up my steam-powered carriage and driving down the road. I would be pleased if you would like to share, like and subscribe to my channel. And see you soon in another episode with full steam ahead. Your Raphaelius from Switzerland. Whee, whoop.
Wow. That was just amazing. Thank you very much, Raphaelis. I will put links to his YouTube and all the other links to where you can find more of his stuff in the description and comments at some point, probably tomorrow, I suspect, because we're running around like mad today. So thank you very much for all those fabulous makers sending those videos in and allowing me to use those videos. They were just brilliant, some amazing stuff there. I'm always in awe because I can't make anything, so absolutely brilliant. Right, now we've got a bit of a change of pace, and if you've just joined us for the opera, or if you joined us a little while ago, we are running about 10 minutes late, so we'll probably catch that up. But so what's next? What's coming up next? Well, we've got some culture for you. We've got a complete steampunk opera called 8. Which is a wonderful opera, and it's performed. It's a video of the live performance, so it's live on stage, as it were, and that's running through. And then around 3 o'clock, we're going to go to the music hall, So 3 o'clock we've got the musical. 4 o'clock we're taking a trip to Hopeless Maine, and around 5 o'clock we've got the shopping channel, and I'll fill you in on the other stuff later.